how do we bridge the gap between the image of our ultimate dreams and the standard shade of consciousness that colors our daily life? The pursuit of meaning is a component of the human experience that is as old as the human experience itself. In literature, this concept is referred to as the hero's journey, and it is ubiquitous across all cultures and stories that have been told throughout human history. American writer Joseph Campbell uncovered in his book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces, that in every great tale, the hero is insecure about their place in the world and must evolve in order to triumph. Our hero's journey is simply the great narrative story of our own lives. It is what we jump back to when we're out of alignment and try to propel ourselves forward to get what we ultimately want out of life. Because whether it's wealth, power, love, or enlightenment, we all want something. Even if that thing is to exist in a state of being that wants nothing at all. And so we may use different words for it, but we are all on our own version of a journey. The fulfillment of our meaning is not an easy or straightforward thing to do. Sometimes it's difficult to stay mindful that we're even on a journey of self-discovery at all, let alone actually doing the work to bring a conscious vision of our lives to reality. We may know what we want, but might not have the means to pursue it. Sometimes we have to take a detour from the path in order to survive in the present. Or maybe the path forward is completely undefined, because we're not sure who we even are. This question of identity is central to the realization and fulfillment of any grander vision for our lives. How do we know that this vision we have for ourselves is the correct one? In many ways, who we are and what we want are actually one and the same. But figuring out who we are is not a straightforward question because no person is an individual in a vacuum. We are all heavily influenced by the social dynamics of our environment, and what we project into the world externally affects the way our mind perceives itself. If we make decisions that go against our higher goals, our subconscious mind will begin to devalue them. In the extreme, we can begin to lose an internally directed sense of self altogether. We become simply a vessel for other people's needs, a socially accepted reflection of what our current environment is willing to validate. Most of us are straddling this line between our obligations to others and what we need to do to honor ourselves. But who actually is this self, independent of external influence? What are we really talking about when we reference the hero's journey, our ultimate goals, and innermost desires? Is there really a hero on a journey at the base of our psyche? What is the inner self? Let's start by answering a more basic question. Is the inner self simply the thoughts that we think? When we aren't occupied by an external task, when our mind is free to roam, what's physically going on in the brain is an activation of what's called the default mode network. The subconscious mind presents us with thoughts of potential importance to be evaluated by the conscious mind. These thoughts are mainly concerned with evaluating past events or trying to plan for the future. We exist in this state of mind for a significant portion of our conscious daily life, and it often feels like the physics of our reality. Our experience of it can be both positive and productive, as well as unrestrained and destructive. But the thoughts that we get presented with are merely a reflection of our mental state. They are not a pure definition of our identity. They are not what I mean when I say the inner self. The inner self is the common thread of understanding that weaves together our story. It is the great arbiter of our truth, the wiser part of ourselves that tries to context all of the events of our life and steer us in the direction that makes sense given the full picture of our experiences, desires, and vulnerabilities. All of our core beliefs that we've struggled to find and defend and build upon, the amalgamation of our feelings. It is the lens of consciousness that we keep coming back to, that we take refuge in when it's time to quiet the chatter and seriously evaluate our lives. The inner self is not your thoughts themselves, it is a collective process that can influence how you think them. Many spiritual groups, religions, and concepts in psychology have different names for this idea. Some call this consistent experience of being simply a pattern of neurons firing in a fatalistic way. Others call it our soul. In any case, the way we experience our conscious reality is absolutely real and matters, even if we are completely secular. Meaning and purpose are not supernatural concepts, they are genuine motivators that are embedded deep within our psyche. To clarify though, I am not a psychologist, nor am I a self-help guru. I'm just a person with unique life experiences and a spread of interactions with different types of human beings. Like many others who have come before me, I have simply recognized that we are all self-interested players in a game of survival, pursuing connection, happiness, and satisfaction. We want to bring forth our higher conceptions of the self, but much of our daily lives rip us out of this 10,000-foot view or convince us that we aren't worthy of having one at all. Connection to the self, leading with the self that we consciously choose, is rarely encouraged. Some of us have never felt this connection before at all, or our once consistent voice has suddenly become absent. Or maybe it does exist, but it has taken on a negative tone. We start off positive and inquisitive in adolescence, and through trauma and societal influence, our self-perception can become weakened and start to work against us. But even if we feel doomed to repeat the same mental cycles, even if we've failed in the past, we always have that capacity to change. There is an internal source of strength that we can call upon to break free from the patterns of the default mode network. We can press the eject button to remove ourselves from the way that we currently perceive reality. We can change through connection to this grand agent within our minds. Now, I'm not suggesting that profound transformation is in any way an easy thing to do, but what does help is to develop this grand why, or meaning, in our lives. Develop this why, and then continue to connect with yourself to make sure that it remains valid as life unfolds. We must honor ourselves not by being a tyrant who's in search of a specific outcome, but by being a loving mentor who wants to see us transcend.
He who has a why to live can bear almost any how, but he whose how has been strengthened can achieve almost any why. Living your life with meaning and connection to the inner self go hand in hand. My goal with this project is not to promote an ironclad belief system or philosophy, but to explore this concept of the inner self as being an accessible property of consciousness. Think back to the last time you had a grand realization about your life, how everything made sense and the path forward was clear. Do you remember how you felt in that moment? We should aim to maximize this feeling within us. We want to fulfill our hero's journey. We want to bring forth the visions that are chosen by our inner self.